Opposed? Make sure you save that money safe.
Deliver it to you.
Only if it's got the combination.
And Bill and Bob were not able to make it this evening, so I will pass that on to them this evening via text. I just wanted to, again, say thank you very much for your time and considering that.
Thank you. Good luck. Where's my part two? Under new business, 25. Wait a minute, that isn't right. Are we using the O2 still?
That's
Okay.
an appeal of that decision.
All right, I would have thought you would have done it in one, sorry. So 25-2, Beaver Lakefront Claremont LLC from Lebanon, New Hampshire, rehearing of application for an area variance from 22-289 to exceed residential density limits and convert a laundromat into an 8th dwelling unit on 145 North Street, tax map 107, lot 328. Can I have an abutters roll call?
Beaver Lakefront Claremont LLC, the Crazy Fox Family Trust 2022, Jean-Pierre Bourque, trustee, Stephen Gregoire, Nima Holdings LLC, Farhan Yacoub, Manfred C. Borchuk, trustee, Eric Stacy.
Austin, what do we have?
I've presented the original staff report from the first hearing on April 29th, or the second hearing on April 29th, as well as the first hearing on February 24th. If you would like me to read through it again to give you the information, just as a refresher, I would be happy to.
Please.
The project site is a 0.24 acre or 10,600 square foot lot at the intersection of North Street and Chellis Street. There's a 14,914 square foot building on the lot that is currently mixed use with 7 residential units and a ground floor laundromat. A former owner received site plan approval and all proper permits to convert a former knick-knack store into the laundromat between 2007 and 2008. The building has also housed other commercial uses, such as a beauty shop and barbershop in the 1980s. The main structure and accessory building are both built within required setbacks, so the lot has non-conforming setbacks on southwest, southeast, and northeast sides. These are existing legal nonconformances. The property has enough land area to permit 2 dwelling units under the residential density requirements of the PR district. The 7 dwelling units exist under existing legal nonconforming density. The property is otherwise in conformance with all other zoning regulations of the CR2 district. The applicant wishes to convert the laundromat into 1 new dwelling unit. The dimensional regulations of the PR district require 5,000 square feet per dwelling unit, meaning that 8 units would require 40,000 square feet. The lot being 10,600 is 29,400 square feet short of the dimensional requirement for 8 units and requires a variance. The applicant has provided plans for the proposed interior renovation, which are included in the application. Multifamily dwellings require 1 space per unit in the city center, so an 8-unit building will need 8 spaces. The current parking area has more than 8 spaces, and the applicant owns property across the street which may be used for off-site parking. So this will be in conformance with our parking regulations. If the variance is granted, the proposed conversion will involve a change of use from mixed use to multifamily residential with more than 3 units, which will require site plan review by the planning board or a waiver thereof if deemed appropriate. The application is thus solely for the purpose of allowing 8 dwelling units in an existing building on a lot non-conforming with maximum residential density requirements of the PR district. On March 3rd, after public hearing duly noticed, the Claremont Zoning Board of Adjustment completed its consideration of Beaver Lakefront Claremont LLC's application for a variance from Section 22-389 of the zoning ordinance and denied the applicant's request. The board received a motion for rehearing from the above parties, and at the public hearing, you granted the rehearing, and here we are at the rehearing.
All right.
Good evening. Should I stand at the podium?
Please, and address who you are to the camera, to the TV, please.
My name is Derek Lick. I'm an attorney at the law firm of Orr and Reno, which is based in Concord. I'm a resident of Sutton, up the road here in 89. I'm here tonight to represent the applicant. As you guys know, I have provided to you a letter laying out what we hope is a different perspective of the application as we see it. We thank you very much for the opportunity to have a rehearing, share our view with the hope of persuading you that you should have some comfort in granting a variance based on the application, given the unique nature of the lot. I was not able to participate in the prior hearing, but I did review your minutes, and I understand the concerns you had about essentially increasing the density and having an 8th unit in a building that has 7 in this building and on this lot. From our perspective, though, and this is where I hope you might have some comfort, our view is that it is, in fact, a request to reduce the impact of the building in the neighborhood because we are replacing a commercial use, that is the laundromat, with a less intensive use, that is a residential apartment. Certainly, if this were a building that had 7 units and not the commercial space that was being essentially changed into a residential unit, I would understand your concerns about increasing the impact on the non-conforming lot, having an 8th unit brand new to the site. But here, because of the unique nature of this particular building, which doesn't have just the 7 units, but an already existing and conforming allowed by use laundromat, the goal here for the client is to transform that, as you've heard, into a residential unit. And typically, I think it's well understood that a commercial use has usually a much more intensive use than a residential use. For example, you would have many more patrons going in and out of the laundromat and using the facilities and parking in the parking lot at all hours than you would a residence, which just has bedrooms in it that are capable of housing tenants. As I think the record was clear from the last hearing, there were some incidents in the laundromat in which the police were called because of vagrants or teenagers disrupting the place and causing some problems. Obviously, with a residential use instead of the laundromat, you hopefully won't have those, but you'll have someone living there and you won't have basically a public access at different hours during the day. So our perspective is that when you look at the site as it is and as it's in its unique way, that is, as a building with 7 residences already, but a commercial use attached to it, when you look at it from that perspective, the proposal actually decreases the nonconformity, will actually be better for the neighborhood, and we think meets the 5 variance criteria. With your permission, what I would propose to do, without reading verbatim, is just to walk you through the letter and the 5 tests to point out what I think are the highlights and where I think it meets those tests. Then what I would propose is I would be happy to answer any questions. The property manager for the client is someone that you apparently already know, Mike back in the audience, so he can have detailed responses to any questions you have about the lot to the extent you have questions about it. So, provided it's okay with you, Mr. Chair, I just run through the criteria one by one as I've done in the letter. Let's start, if we can, with the variance not being contrary to the public interest and that the spirit of the ordinance is observed. As I say in my letter, these are the first 2 elements which are essentially intertwined in the court interpretation of them. And ultimately, the Supreme Court has said when you look at these 2 tests together, you're looking at 2 different things. One is, will granting the variance alter the essential nature of the neighborhood? That's one. And then 2 is to examine whether or not the variance will threaten public health, safety, or welfare. With respect to the first criteria, will it ultimately alter the essential character of the neighborhood? Our view is no, it will not. Now it is a 7-unit residential complex with commercial. It will actually make it more compliant with the neighborhood feel. It'll have 8 units and no commercial use, which we think will not alter the residential nature of the neighborhood and actually be better for the neighborhood. With respect to threatening public safety, health, and welfare, we again view the residential conversion from the commercial space to be beneficial to those. We think to the extent there have been any concerns about vagrants and others in the commercial space, that will no longer be a concern because we now have a residential use that will have someone living there and it won't be open to the public. So we think the first two elements, the first two tests and 5-part criteria are in fact met. With respect to the third, the substantial justice will be done. Here, this isn't one where the court asks us to look to the benefit of the public interest, why you had the provision in the first instance, and you balance that against the harm to the applicant by maintaining the ordinance. Here, we don't think there really is any articulable public benefit to denying the variance. Ultimately, if you deny it, it will be a significant burden on the applicant, both because of the concerns about the public safety with the laundromat, and as he articulated before, he's having problems insuring the premises, which is one of the things that drove him to this. But more importantly, when it comes to balancing out the purpose of your ordinance, which is to make sure that you don't have overly dense neighborhoods, lack of safety, lack of parking, etc. Here, because you're converting a commercial space that has a more intense use to a residential space, the benefit will actually be for the variance, not as opposition to the variance. With respect to the values of the surrounding properties not being diminished, I didn't see a lot of conversation about that in the prior minutes. It didn't seem like that was a concern to you, but in any event, if it is, once again, we think that turning that commercial space into a residential space will actually help the property values. It'll take away the public traffic coming in and out of the area, will hopefully preclude any vagrancy, et cetera, in what was a public space into a now private residential space. And then finally, the one that I think is always the most difficult for applicants, and that's the unnecessary hardship test. Here, I've laid out sort of the test as it stands today, and specifically, there are two areas you need to look to. One is whether or not, owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, there is no fair and substantial relationship between the public purpose of the ordinance and the application here, and that the proposed use is a reasonable one. As I reviewed your ordinance, which you will know better than I, but when I reviewed it, my review seemed to indicate the purpose of the density restriction is to ensure, again, that you're not having overly packed housing. You're basically having people try to park without adequate parking and not enough open space. Here, the building is already pre-existing. As your town planner has indicated, there's plenty of parking to meet the needs of the 8th unit, and indeed, likely less parking will be needed at peak times because there won't be commercial activity going on in the first floor unit any longer. And therefore, when you look at the goal of the ordinance in reducing density and reducing impact, here, by granting the variance, you're actually going to support the ordinance and meet that goal by approving it, because you're going to reduce the impact with traffic and people and parking, and it would be better to meet the ordinance to make it basically more conforming than it is today. And then again, with respect to the use being a reasonable one, we certainly believe that adding that 8th unit in place for the commercial space will be more beneficial to the neighborhood, is a perfectly reasonable use of the space. I know there was some discussion at the prior meeting about whether or not you could simply keep the same number of units by merging units together on the lower level. There's a practical difficulty with that, having such a large unit, which essentially I think would be about 1,400 square feet, the size of a small house. Sounds like you folks have addressed that in a prior application that was just before you a moment ago. But in addition to that, even if you were to break it up into, keep it as a single unit, you're still going to have basically the same number of bedrooms, maybe even more people than you would if you broke it into 2 units. So our view is, as a practical matter, that doesn't make sense, and it really doesn't serve the purpose of the ordinance to ensure that you have a single large unit downstairs as opposed to 2 smaller units. So with that, I think we've laid out from our perspective the way that we look at this, which is it's actually a decrease in the intensive use of the space, and it actually furthers the ordinance by reducing traffic and making it more compliant with what the neighborhood would like to see, which is residential uses. So that's my piece. I'm hoping if you have any questions, you'll ask them of me, and if I can't answer them, I'll pass them on.
Can I explain to Mr. Lick our main concern from the last meeting? because he has not brought it
By all
up.
means, yep.
Go right ahead.
So, Mr. Stacy, when he presented his case, you've presented 100 times better case than he did, understanding you do this for a living, he doesn't. But Mr. Stacy was very, I guess demanding might be the strong word to use, but his whole case was based upon financial. Everything he did was financial. And unfortunately, we cannot, and you know this, we cannot consider financial as a hardship. We tried to explain to him financial hardships. The fact that he can't insure it as a laundromat, we cannot use that. His main drive was, I can't get insurance. I can't afford to put insurance. And unfortunately, that's why the main reason for me, and I don't know about anybody, the main reason is his whole case was burdened on the dollar amount. And in your whole presentation tonight, you kind of wanted to go there, but you know you can't. And I hope Mr. Stacy understands that the terminology that's used, the way the case is presented, is what we have to go by. We can't take and change his application. We can't make the application read correctly. And I was kind of offended when he left by his threatening remarks.
Well,
Me personally, I don't know about anybody else. I've been doing this, as you heard earlier, I've been doing this for over 30 years. I try to be fair with everybody who comes before us. I try to look for the best possible fit for everything that we do. I'm a business owner in this town. I've been here for 58 years. You know, I stay on this board because I have the best interest in Claremont at heart. This is a volunteered position. All these people dedicate their time, and they don't need that. Just with that being, I'm going to let that. I'm not going to beat a dead horse. We're on something new, and I just want to make sure you understand where it went for us.
I appreciate that very much. I should say a couple of things to you. One is, I too am glad that he came to counsel for legal advice. These are very tricky. We've been doing it for 30 years. It's maybe a very easy approach easier to understand for somebody who's been doing it for long. I too serve as the chair of a zoning board in my little town of Sutton. I see things from both perspectives, and I know applicants often have a very difficult time navigating the process. All that aside, I completely understand your view. In reading the minutes, I understood that was your concern, and that's why I'm particularly appreciative that despite the tone or the demeanor or the concerns that you had with respect to the presentation, the goal here was to basically provide you folks, again, I think with perspective and context that you didn't have before, that I hope gives you comfort to say, regardless of the prior meeting, you have, I think, sufficient evidence as presented that would allow you with comfort to grant the variance if you were so inclined. And I think, frankly, I do think that the conversion is the key, that this is, if it were a 7-unit apartment complex where you're just simply trying to add an 8th unit, it's one thing, but the conversion to me is what makes the difference and makes a variance possible. I hope you find that given the perspective we presented. But I do appreciate where you're coming from, and I completely understand what you did, and that's why I'm, again, very appreciative you were willing to take a step back and even give consideration to the application to give it some, thank you for that. I do appreciate it.
Thank you. Is there any questions for Mr. Litt? No?
No.
Either one of you gentlemen, Mr. Stacy, anybody else want to throw their 2 cents in? Being none, we have no butters. I'm going to call the public hearing closed. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Under our discussion, as I stated, you know, this is a totally different approach to the application than the first one. I think a lot of the points that are made in the second one make more sense. I think they are where they need to be. You know, we'll go through the 5 criteria, which Mr. Lickett has already done. will it be in contrary with the public interest? I think compared to our previous application, we're going to reduce the impact for the general welfare. We're going to decrease the amount of flow in and out of the building, in and out of that area. We're going to reduce congestion. One of the questions that we have in our breakdown, which is item number 4, there again, the value, I don't see where is changing, other than probably hurting the tax situation a little bit, because it'll be taxed for less, that it doesn't have any value change to the surrounding area.
Now, this building will be sprinkled, correct? After this 8th unit? That'll be a requirement?
That's correct.
That's going to address the life and safety codes.
So it takes care of that.
The spirit aspect, the congestion alone as was presented, and you're gonna, I believe it was a 1-bedroom unit, and they were aiming for somebody maybe as a traveling nurse type clientele to be in there. Those people go to work, come home, go to bed. You're not putting a group of people into a home that's gonna be a burden on our services. You got the 1-bedroom, 1 person.
Mike,
Yes, sir.
isn't that a 2-bedroom?
2-bedroom.
It's an ADA unit with 2
With a
bedrooms.
caretaker,
Is it a 2-bedroom?
yes.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
it's a 2-bedroom.
But that being said, it's still, they meet the parking requirement. They have 8. Less traffic. So, foot
Less
traffic
impact.
anyway.
Yeah, less impact, definitely a lot less people around.
Not saying that North Street's got a bunch of hoodlums hanging out there, but, general safety to the public. You're not gonna have
Gonna have it.
a place where people can congregate and,
It's gonna reduce the risk of fire with the sprinkler system.
and as the attorney said, I do believe that it is a reasonable use under the hardship. It does fall under the B for that part, in this part of the presentation. Anybody else have anything they want to add to the 5?
Yeah, absolutely.
Points?
That's it.
No, I mean, that's pretty much it. That's,
Basically
I guess
covered it.
Every application came in with the criteria addressed like this.
Yep.
Looks better. Oh, it'd be
Makes
great.
it a lot easier.
I'll tell you, the two
Than having to fill it
things
out.
tonight were
Fill it out for the people.
so
while
much.
we're sitting up here,
so much easier to work with this type of an application compared to the other 99% we
Plans
get.
are- the plans
And I
are pretty nice.
thank both applicants for that to make,
And another thing I want to thank the attorney for not being over wordy. You said it in like 5 minutes.
yeah.
And we've had it said in 50 minutes. Same thing.
Same stuff.
Like, gee.
So with that being said, do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve application ZO 2025-00002 by Eric Stay for a variance from section 22-389 for zoning ordinance to allow 8 dwelling units in the building at 145 North Street, parcel 107-328, subject to the following conditions. The applicant shall obtain and receive all necessary permits and approvals for this project as determined by local, state, and federal government. This will include the site plan approval from the Claremont Planning Board of waiver of such if determined appropriate. No work is permitted to commence until such permits or appropriate statements of compliance with local, state, and federal regulations are submitted and approved by the Planning and Development Department. Failure to comply with the conditions of this decision shall constitute a violation pursuant to section 22-9:B of the Claremont zoning ordinance. The variance shall be recorded in the chain of title.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Good luck.
Have a good night. Communications.
Nothing.
Under other